People always ask me the question, like, what is your favorite project that you've ever done? And I've always tell them it's the one I'm going to do next. I've done all genres, comedies, dark films. It really is. It's taking on the story and telling the story, which is just and solving the problem of how to how to film that project. That's what really is exciting to me. It really is. And on a day-to-day basis, it's just solving the problem. There's always something happening that's got to be fixed or worked on or created. Well, my early influences and the reason I became a cinematographer because after I got out of the Army and went back to the University of Texas, I lived next door to a couple of people who lived in worked in a TV station, and they just came by one day and said, "Hey, there's a job available at the television station. Would you be interested?" I said, "Sure." So I went there. I mean, basically, it was just answering the phone, but eventually I got into the news department where I got handed a camera, and I just fell in love with the camera, and it just completely changed my life. So after my television career, I started doing industrials, and then finally commercials, and ultimately I moved to Los Angeles and started making movies. Some of my influences would, be the great cinematographers of all time. Freddie Young, who shot Lawrence of Arabia. I mean, it's probably still my favorite film of all time. Not to mention film noir movies. I mean, I still love watching those films like Casablanca, and I just fell in love with the movies a long time ago. But that combined with having a camera put in my hand sort of brought me into it, and I decided to take a chance and try to get into and make movies in Hollywood. So actually, Tobe Hooper, who was the original director of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was the person who really helped me get started out there. Well, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a classic horror movie. I mean, it got Tobe Hooper into Hollywood and got Steven Spielberg interested in him, and consequently getting him on Poltergeist. And to this day, I mean, it's such a scary movie. I mean, it was banned in Europe as being the bloodiest movie ever made. And there's hardly any blood in it. I think the only blood in it is in the beginning when the guy cuts his finger. I mean, that's really it. It's all because the movie was so cheap. They had to do all the violence off screen. So, and I use that to this day. That it's far more powerful to not see the violence because the mind sort of takes over and does a much more horrific job than oftentimes visual and special effects can do. Living in Austin, going to the University of Texas, and knowing these people, I mean, I kind of got to know Tobe as they were filming it because it was a small film community at the time. So naturally, it was like somebody's making a movie here, and it was just exciting by the virtue of the fact that they were making a movie. I mean, it's just like anywhere you go, if a movie comes to town or comes to your neighborhood, everybody gets excited about it because it's just a movie. And so, and I had ambitions at this point to want to maybe move into that part of the world. So I kept close tabs on it. I mean, I saw all the movies and was so happy to work on the original. I mean, I didn't get credited. I didn't get paid or anything. I was just excited about working on a movie. But I stayed in touch with these people because I knew that down the line, they're contacts and somehow they're going to pay off. And obviously, when I got to Los Angeles after I did my first movie with Roger Corman, the first thing I did was pick up the phone and call Tobe and ask him to come down and look at it. And at that point, he decided to start putting me on his projects.
Don't hit me!
Well, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre came about for me because of Kim Henkel. Kim Henkel was the writer of the original. And we had gone to college together, and I had known him for some time. And in the original, I was actually the voice on the radio in the background, the opening sequences. And we'd stayed in touch, over the years. And at the time, I was doing Tales from the Crypt, the television series for HBO. And so he called me one day and told me that he was doing this movie, and it corresponded to the end of Tales from the Crypt, so I decided to do it and just took on the project, and went to Austin and to work with him because I wanted to work with him because I thought for a long time he had so much talent. It was interesting to see him move in from the writer position into the director position because as a director I thought he did an excellent job.
Oh,
it like to film in Texas in the 90s? Well, it was difficult. I mean, one, the location was very difficult. I mean, it was out in the middle of the woods, out in the middle of nowhere on somebody's ranch. You know, we drove around for hours trying to find a location that was suitable to shoot in. And the other thing is that, you know, it was full of poison ivy. I mean, everybody but me got poison ivy. I'm assuming now that I'm not allergic to poison ivy. But it was hot. I mean, I guess the good news is it was mostly at night, so at least it was cooler at night than it was in the daytime. But it was, you know, it was not your typical production where you have all the conveniences and, you know, and all the, you know, the niceties that normally would go along with the production. It just didn't. It was just that low budget. I mean, it was just hot and humid, and which added to the film, oddly enough. I mean, I think to the photography, just the high moisture level in the air just gave it a whole kind of feeling to it. The other thing is that just the moisture just made all the wardrobe droop. So it just it actually added to it, but it was just miserable working conditions in terms of the heat and humidity. And, you know, and I think, you know, ultimately we all had kind of fun on that. I mean, there were some funny things that happened. I mean, when I first got there, we went to the house where we were going to shoot, and Kim Henkel thought that he was going to put Renee Zellweger up on the top of that house, which is really steep pitched roof. And I said, man, there ain't no way you're going to put her up there. You're going to have to build it down here on the ground where we can get to it. So they did. You know, I mean, there was another incident, you know, the crop duster in the end. By one of the camera assistants, we had to mount the camera under the belly of the crop duster. Well, they left off the mag cover on the back side of the film, which allowed light to hit the film. And they told me after the plane had taken off that they had forgotten to put that on, and I thought the thing would be ruined. Oddly enough, the film was not fogged at all, and I, to this day, do not understand how that happened. Well, we talked a lot about, you know, what was going on inside. I mean, one of the problems that we had there was the keys that were hanging on the wall. We did this, which kind of had a nice look to it, you know, because they reflected the light and whatnot. But whenever people would walk around the house, they'd make noise. So there was all kinds of problems like that arose. But you know, we had a really good production designer, and I thought she really did a good job of making this house weird and strange, which it needed to be in order to, you know, be in line and follow the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know, I mean, we all knew we were making a low-budget movie. That we're all in it, and we knew what to expect in this movie. That you know, there weren't going to be any frills, and it was just the fun of making a movie. And we just had to put up with the heat, and, you know, the poison ivy, and, you know, the bad, you know, the distant location, and but, you know, it all worked out. Robert Jacks was one of my favorite people. I mean, he really added a nice, you know, nuance to that character, and he really, you know, put his whole heart into it. You know, he died shortly after that. I mean, he was really, I mean, he and I kind of got close. You know, we really, in fact, he gave me his the Leatherface. He gave me the face, you know, as just as a memento of the movie, and I was just really sad to see him pass so early in his life. Well, I had some disappointments about the film. Mainly, it was the ending. I mean, I felt like the Illuminati character was just out of the blue. I mean, you know, he wasn't developed in the movie. He just shows up out of nowhere, and I told Kim, I said, you know, where did this guy come from? I mean, you know, I think part of his thinking was, when writing it, was that he wanted to, you know, to throw back in things that the fans of the movie would, you know, loved about it. And I just felt like that this guy was like the voice of the writer. I mean, he just, rather than just being developed in the movie and the character, he just dropped in out of nowhere, and it kind of threw me, you know, in seeing it and reading it. The other thing is too is I felt like that the crop duster, we never met the guy who was flying the crop duster. I mean, he comes in and saves the day. It's just too serendipitous. I mean, you know, a guy up in a plane and he sees all this going down on the ground. I mean, it just didn't make sense to me. It was a good time, you know. It's hey, listen, I've got one of the best jobs in the world, you know, that I get to make movies, and it you know, I always give the advice I give to my daughters: do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life, and that's really what I feel I've been privileged to do.